Hello, welcome back to Bald and Board Games. I'm Bald.
I'm Board.
And today we're going to be doing a live learn of 7th Citadel. This is by Serious Poulp. We just did an unboxing, so go find that video so you can see everything that came in the game, including the expansions that came with the game, which we have added into everything already. But for right now, we're going to be diving in to the rulebook.
Yes, so we have a pretty simple rulebook here. Not that thick, probably about 10-15 pages. So we're going to go through, we're going to show you what they tell us how the rules work.
What they tell us how the rules work. Let's see, tell us what rules, how they work, yes?
The very end of this rulebook, it tells you how to set up a character. So there's 4 characters. We have the little minis here on our map, or our game board that
Actually,
doesn't exist yet.
I wonder why there's 8 of them if there's only 4 characters.
No idea. But right now there's 4 sets. And we'll set up a character sheet, explain kind of how that works as the very end once we get through the rules.
Maybe it's like male and female?
But let's get this going. So, as we open up the rulebook here, you'll see all the components. We already went through, as Nick mentioned, we took out all of the cards, threw out the wrapping paper. We went through, made sure they were all organized, added all the expansions in. So everything is ready for initial setup.
Yep.
But here we go. So you could do this one of 2 ways. One, you can watch our video and support us, which is great.
Thank you. Which you already are, so keep watching.
You can also scan a QR code, and it'll give you a full video learn how to play.
Which this is.
Yeah.
So go like, subscribe, share, and tell everyone else to go watch us and learn how to play 7th Citadel.
So here we go. Overview and object of the game. The 7th Citadel is a co-op exploration and adventure board game in which you play against the game to beat a threat that looms over you. You may take this on alone as 2, 3, or 4 adventurers. You win if you manage to overcome the threat. When this happens, it'll be clearly stated. You lose if all the characters are unconscious or an in-game effect reads your adventure ends here. So rule summary. You are facing a threat in the form of a threat booklet divided into scenarios. So in the game, you'll see a bunch of these threat booklets right here. We have 3 of them. Normally you'll have 2, but we have one of them called the Final Throne, which is one of the expansions. So this will go through whatever the threat may be that you're facing. You explore the world of the collapsing lands. So that is our universe. You resolve exploration cards, putting into play a number of adventure cards, terrain, and permanent event cards that gradually form a board. You also will talk with inhabitants of the collapsing lands. And the way that happens is we have this very fun dialogue book. So as different things happen, it'll tell you to go to a number. You read whatever's in that section.
We assume. We haven't done this yet.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll find out. We're probably doing this all wrong. During the game...
Are you reading the book backwards? Oh my god!
During the game, you decide collectively which character will take an action from among those seen on the terrain card that their figure is standing on. There's permanent event cards attached to terrain card. There's skills, characters, purse, and quest item cards. Action costs. It'll tell you, it gives you a little graphic here, that you have whatever your action is, the action cost, and the action difficulty in order to succeed. You have consequences to applying if you succeed, and the consequences to apply if the action fails. I don't like that they name consequences for succeeding. Consequence would fail. It should be like...
What's still a consequence? It's still... The consequence is
positive
directly
or
due to your action. I mean, it's white for positive, black for negative.
Yeah, could have been better.
It's fine.
In order to perform actions...
Because there may actually be a consequence for succeeding.
That is true.
There we go. I win. You're welcome.
Maybe. We don't know that.
Steve.
We don't know that yet. We haven't read the book. We haven't played
I've played 7 Continents, so I do know that
game.
actually.
Different game.
No.
In order to perform actions, you use your personal action deck. Every action works the same way. The active player will choose to take the action, and then you go through the following steps. Select which of your purse cards you wish to use. Their effects include lowering the amount of energy a player must spend to perform the action and potentially increasing the chances of success. You can spend energy, which is represented by the action's cost, by drawing cards from your action deck. You can reveal any drawn cards, which are worth variable amounts of success, and then compare their total number of successes with the action's difficulty. applying the consequence of the action, which varies depending on whether you succeed or fail. So those are the 4 steps you're going to go through if you're doing an action. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Wow, self-explanatory. Yeah, so you select what card you want to use. You're going to spend energy, draw cards, and then as long as you succeed, read that one. If you fail, you read the other side.
In case you need a tutorial on how to create words, keep watching. Explanatory.
Once the active player has finished an action, another turn begins. One player, either the same one or another one, will take an action. Note, certain actions called compound actions must be performed multiple times to be finished, but they essentially follow the same process, with a few minor differences, which are detailed on the cards. When you no longer have enough cards in your action deck, you must perform a recovery to shuffle cards from your discard back into the action deck. However, this causes you to lose life points, which that'll explain later on in the rulebook. When you run low on life paint... Wow. Today is bad.
Life paints. When you run low on life paints, go to Michael's.
I would go to Lowe's or Home Depot. When you run low on life points, or you think you have achieved the goal set by the scenario, it is time for you to return to the Citadel to discover the consequence of your action. Throughout the game, your group of adventurers will progress by accumulating hope, represented by specific cards, and trading it for precious bonuses on the Destiny page of your leaflet, which looks like...
the Destiny page?
Yeah.
I assume it's...
Yes.
Okay, so hope must be the equivalent of experience points. Because much like other RPGs, you have this page here, which is like a branching tree of skills. That
helps you deeper in the game. Nice.
I like that.
Last thing is, unlike most board games, 7th Citadel gives you the experience of a long-term adventure, while the easy saving system enables you to suspend your adventure at any time and resume later.
Yeah, something that was really great about 7th Continent, that I'm glad they're doing this one too, is like you can literally just stop. Like so you can just keep going. Yeah. There's no natural stopping point. It's just when you finish, obviously the threat, or like if you're done playing, you can literally just stop, pack it up. Yeah, you're good.
So the next set of pages, now I'll hand over to Nick, goes through all your card types.
Oh, you're giving me all the boring stuff.
No, I was going to do, yeah. So you have all your card types. All of this, there is a page right next that tells you exactly how to organize it in all of the little, what do you want to call these things?
Well, there's
boxes.
There's a bunch of boxes, much like the first one.
Yep.
Right? And so the game, nope, I got it. The game comes with a bunch of dividers, so it's very self-explanatory. The dividers have the names on there. They're also color-coded to match the cards. All the cards are pre-packed in the order they're supposed to be in already. So all you have to do is open the pack and put it in front of the proper divider. That's it.
Yeah, so this just goes through what all those different types of cards are. The tutorial will also, or as we read through, will also show all of that. And then the last thing here is it shows your sorting system. So it literally tells you not only how to put the cards in there, but exactly what order they go in, which groups go with which divider sections.
Yeah, so we'll go over the card types. Do you want to go over the card? We'll go over the card types. We'll skip the sorting.
Well, I'm assuming it's going to happen as we read through the rules. So we can like...
Well, no, it doesn't. That's what literally what I was telling you here. We'll do a quick overview of these. Let me go. So for the different card types, see if we can get this.
I can just go to you.
Yeah, you want that real quick here? Into view. Boom. So here, as you can see, we have our character cards. I'm not going to go over what each of the things mean on them necessarily. Obviously, they have their name, they have their corresponding figure, many they have their actions and abilities and skills, which will make sense as you start playing the game. You have some yellow save cards, which have a specific meaning. You have your action cards, which are blue, which are the ones you use. You have exploration cards, which are used when you explore. They're face down on the board to begin with, and then as you explore, they pull face up. You have your adventure cards, which you'll be told to pull whenever you do an action, and those adventure cards underneath could be terrain, permanent events, or temporary events. So a terrain card are portions of collapsing lands that form the board you're actually on. You may move your figure onto them and take actions from within those cards. Permanent events are cards that have an event that happens, and that card always just stays there. Temporary events are temporary. When it flips over, it'll give you something to do, and it'll tell you when you would remove it. You have your global event cards, which happen to everybody. Those are color-coded in red. You have your purse cards, which are essentially the cards that used to be in your backpack. Those are like your equipment cards. And you can only hold, I believe, a certain number of these. These have keywords and symbols that play off each other, and that's really how you get through the game and accomplish tasks. So if you need to climb up something, you may have to find something that has the rope symbol on it that you can then use to climb up. And so it'll go over this in the book later, but when having to do something, it'll say you need this many successes, or you need this many successes if you have this type of item. Then you have quest items, which has a little book icon, of course, which are, as it sounds, items you'll probably need for a quest that you're currently on or one that's upcoming. And then, interesting, they have world map cards. Those probably give you points of interest to go to. Then, like Steve said, you have your sorting, and it says a new adventure begins. So here it says you will choose your character and their starting skills during the introductory scenario, a new beginning. When you have finished reading the rules and are ready to begin a new adventure, open the introductory scenario booklet to page 3 and read until the booklet tells you to stop. So we are still going through the rules. You want to go through the overview?
Yep. So game overview here. Pretty much it just tells you all of the other pieces of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your world map. So we have that. It's a nice little fold out. It shows it to you on your little paper here inside, but it's actually the one you'll play with in the game format, where all of these are slots where you can slide different cards into as the game tells you to do so. You have your dialogue book, which we briefly covered. That'll be when you're talking to different people throughout the game. You have your threat booklets, which we covered as identifying what the threat you're fighting is for that game. You have all your different group cards. So you have banished cards. Those are cards that literally have been banished, and they'll go behind that divider. And then you have the past cards, which are discarded during the game and put in there, but those may be able to come back.
Yep.
You have the Citadel leaflet, which we showed right here. You have your adventure decks and exploration decks all within those boxes. You have a life point counter. As you can see here, there are 4 of them, 1 for each set, along with the character set figures that go with them. You have quest items, or quest item area, which is also another set of things over there. So anything we're doing for quests will go behind that divider. We have our action deck that Nick just covered is also over there. Mm-hmm. And the action deck will be on the table with a discard pile next to it. Mm-hmm. You have your purse cards. You have your own hand of action cards. And then that global event card that'll be impacting everyone. And then you have the board. So you're going to be building the board as this whole long adventure campaign will happen. So here it says you have the front of terrain cards. You have and it gives you examples of like what a permanent event card looks like, what an exploration card looks like, what a terrain card looks like. But those will all happen as we build the map, as we progress day by day, week by week.
Yeah, and much like other games, to Dungeonology or any tile laying game, when you clank catacombs, when you go to explore the next card, Tiny Epic Dungeons, another one, you flip over the card that's next to it, reveals the further map. A little bit different here, though, is the map isn't randomized. It's actually the larger map, or it's a zoomed in portion of that larger map that you're exploring around and doing different actions on those cards.
Yep. So now into how we actually play.
For the turn sequence, so each turn, one player is collectively chosen to be the active player. They choose the available action they wish to take. This action will always be represented by an icon in a white square visible on one of the following: the terrain card their figure is currently standing on, a permanent event card which would be attached to the terrain card the figure is they're currently standing on, a temporary event card which has been revealed, and that action is mandatory, it says. So if you reveal a temporary event card, you have to do it. One of their skill cards, so one of those blue cards that they have in their hand, one of the purse cards, or one of the quest item cards. And again, the action is represented by a white square on one of those cards, and it gives you an example down here of each of them. Pretty much rule of thumb is you have to either be on the card, or the card has to be attached to the card you're on or in your hand to do.
Makes sense.
Then you're going to check for other involved characters. So each character whose figure is on the active player's terrain card, so if Steve is on the same card that I'm on, they may get involved in the action if it's not mandatory and see the active player agree. And the active player agrees. So if the action is not mandatory, Steve can join in if I say, yeah, please help out.
But I get to take some of the spoils.
I would imagine so. Or it's co-op, so I think, I don't know.
Well, if not, I'm not helping.
Right? Or you must get involved if in the action if it is mandatory. So if it's a mandatory action and if you're on the same card as me, you have to help.
So never share your card.
Unless otherwise stated, only the mandatory actions are represented by the white square with red jagged lines or just red around that white square. Otherwise, unless otherwise stated, only the active player may use their blue hand cards or purse cards during the action, and they may only use their own cards. So what that means is you can only use your own equipment and your own cards from your hand during that action, unless it's one of those other two areas. You get a little note here, getting involved in another player's action may be helpful where some skills can be used to help the active player. So the example beforehand in regard to needing a rope to get over a wall, Steve, if he's in the same spot as me, I can't choose to use his rope card if he has one. But if he chooses to participate in the action, that's where he could use his rope to help us get through it and make it easier. Number 3, resolve the action. The active player resolves the 4 steps of the action: gear up, draw, result, and consequence. Number 4, start a new turn. A new turn begins with a new active player being appointed. It may be the player from the previous turn, if all players agree. If you cannot reach an agreement, the player to the left of the last active player becomes the new active player. So it's really a free-flowing sort of game to where it's going to be whatever is going to best suit the objective.
Yep.
And then you want to do action types? We'll just kind of continue, going back to the community section.
Yeah, so action types here. It shows you a bunch of those actions that Nick just talked about. It just gives you the symbol, kind of tells you what happens. So starting off with the white square, that's your simple action. That is most of the actions in the game. They immediately end after the consequence step. You have group actions. As a little orange staircase. It can only be taken unless all conscious...
That is for sure red. You colorblind.
That is for sure orange.
It is red.
That is red on the bottom and orange on the top stair.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll agree.
It's fading.
It's gradient.
So all conscious players must get involved for group actions.
Mm-hmm.
Forbidden actions cannot be taken if another action is already being performed, if it has a prerequisite that has not been met, if it has the group icon and not all conscious players are involved, or has an icon, which is a white square with a like V belt-like.
So the permanent.
Which is the permanent, which can be seen on the permanent event cards. This means the action has already been performed and cannot be performed again. The 4th type is compound. That's your white square with a little die, and it matches the symbol actually on our dice.
Nice.
Compound actions feature 1 or more rows, each with consequence sections for success and failure. The current action row is the one where a die lies on the icon representing the action's difficulty. A compound action is resolved over several turns. If it is mandatory, you must take it again right after resolving the consequence steps. You just kind of got to go through it all.
Those are new. The compound actions weren't in 7th Continent. That's kind of fun.
If it's not mandatory, you can return later at any point. And then the last one is your mandatory actions. That is your white square with the red jagged border. When it can be seen on a temporary event card, and that's where those little hourglass things come into play, or in a dialogue box, all characters on the same terrain card as the player must get involved. The involved characters choose which of them is the active player. When it can be seen on a terrain card, all characters must also get involved. The involved character chooses which of them is the active player. So both. So mandatory is on a temporary event card or on a terrain card. Everyone has to do it, and then as a group, you figure out who is the active player.
Yep.
And then we move on to resolving an action, which I know the next page is actually going to go through a whole detail, but I'll just read this and hand it off.
Yep, go for
it. So when you resolve an action, all actions have a little white icon of what the action is, the default cost, which is the minimum number of cards the active player must draw from the action deck.
And that default cost is portrayed by Blue Diamond.
Yes, and that is, I believe, right... It was back here somewhere. I covered it.
Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, it was right here in the little example we have back here. And then the difficulty, which is a gold star with a number in it. And that is the number of successes, which is gold stars, needed to succeed. And then you have your white box for your succeed consequence, your black box for your failed consequence. Compound actions come with a slot for a die, showing the action's difficulty. When the active player takes the action, if there's no die on the card, they must place one in the little slot marker on the first action roll to make sure its value matches the shown difficulty. If no die is available, an active player must take one from another card. So I guess that means if you have multiple compound action cards, you can only do up to 4 steps.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of weigh out which ones you want to do and potentially give up on another one you started a few turns ago to start a new one.
Interesting.
And then the default cost of some actions come with a chain link icon with the chain next to that yellow blue diamond, which caps the number of cards you may take into account.
Oh.
For success. That's interesting.
Yeah, so typically usually those card indicators will state like 3+, meaning you take 3 or more. Or maybe you could take less than 3. I don't recall. Did it say you could take less than 3? It probably could. I know that the chain icon I think means you have to take at least 3 if it was the chain 3 or more. So that's also here most likely. So here we go. The action resolution steps. Number 1, gear up. The active player selects from among their purse cards those whose effects, some or all, they wish to apply. Each effect may be used only once during the action. So you can't use your purse cards more than once. A card may only be selected if it has a condition icon that matches, so that's a brown square, and it has to match the white square action that you're taking. So again, continuing the example of the rope. If the action had a white rope icon on it that I was trying to do, I could only use my gear to help if it has that brown rope icon that matches. It says, and no keyword in common with another selected card. So a card can only be selected if it has a condition icon, the brown square that matches the taken action, the white square, and no keyword in common with another selected card. Okay. Golden rule says when a brown square with the red jagged border icon can be seen on one of the active player's purse cards or on a global event card, which looks like a little weather cloud, and the active player takes the corresponding action, they must select that card and apply its effect. So you have to use that purse card in that situation. So clarifications. You do not need to select a skill card whose effect you want to apply during the action. You do not need to select skill cards. Okay. When the active player takes an action available on one of the purse cards, that card is automatically selected.
So you can use the purse cards over and over again, just only once per action. Okay.
Right. When selected, can be read as part of an effect on a purse card. You must apply the effect that follows if you have selected the card during the gear up setup step of the action. So during this step where you're gearing up, if there is a portion of your purse card that says selected, yada yada, apply those effects. An empty condition icon, the brown square, on a card means the associated effect may be applied during any action. Essentially, it's a wild if there's no image inside that brown square.
Yep, makes sense. Okay.
And so during that gear up, just to recover that the top line was kind of confusing at first. So essentially, you're choosing what gear to bring with you into this action. You don't need to choose from your hand your skills ahead of time. You just need to choose your purse cards ahead of time. Step 2, draw. The active player determines the cost of the action and draws that many cards. Those are the blue squares or diamonds that Steve was just talking about. So determine the cost of the action. Cost is shown in the blue diamond. It represents the number of cards the active player must draw, aka the energy they must spend from their action deck to perform the action. So a plus and then the number effect increases the action's cost by the number stated. A minus and then the number effect reduces the action's cost by that stated number. The cost of an action may be 0 In cases where the cost is lowered below 0, consider it to be 0. Pretty straightforward. Step 2 of draw is draw action cards. The active player draws a number of action cards from the top of their action deck equal to the cost of the action and places them face down in front of themselves. If they choose to, they may draw any number of additional cards from the top of their action deck to increase their chances of success. Any such additional cards are placed face down with those previously drawn. If the action deck contains fewer cards than they should be drawing, the active player must immediately draw the remaining cards and perform a recovery, which we'll explain later, which does not end the action, and then continues to draw from the replenished deck enough cards to pay the action's cost, provided their character is still conscious. So, much like other deck building games, when your deck runs out, shuffle your discard to form a new deck, and then I assume in that recovery you probably remove a card from the game, most likely. But that'll be covered in the recovery section, which we'll explain in a moment. Then we have part 3, the result. The active player reveals the cards they drew, counts the obtained successes, and then compares the totals with the action's difficulty. Part A, reveal the cards. The active player reveals the cards they just drew by flipping them face up. And next, take successes into account. The active player may take into account any obtained successes visible in the result areas, left-hand strip of the cards they just revealed. So to give you an example, just take a random card out of here. That left-hand strip, there are stars in that area, or parts of stars in that area. 1 success for each full star you can make. 1 success for each pair of half stars they manage to combine to construct a full star, provided the halves are orientated so when combined they form 1 complete star, i.e. left to right. And you would take your cards and put them together. So that card that I just showed you that has halves on each side of that strip, you can't use that as, oh yeah, they'll make 1 star.
Yeah, don't cut your card in half and put it together.
Yeah, don't do that. The active player is not compelled to take all obtained successes into account. They may even choose to ignore them all if they wish. Interesting.
So I'm assuming there's a point where if you have too many successes, it's actually worse for you.
Maybe, yeah. Important exception. Some actions with a chain icon next to the cost to do that action, the blue diamond that Steve covered earlier, are less likely to succeed without the appropriate skills and or equipment. The chain icon means the active player may take into account the successes, so the stars and half stars, in the result area of X revealed cards at most, and it's the player's choice, where X is the action's default cost. So if it's a chain 3+, and if I drew 5 cards, I can only choose 3 of those 5 to try and make my stars. For example, if the action's default cost is 3+, the active player may take into account the star halves icons resulting in 3 revealed cards. Literally what I just said. Cool.
Nice.
The restriction only applies to the successes in the revealed cards result area. So it looks like if there are abilities on those cards, the same when drawn, you can still use those abilities. So it's only the stars. Then do you want to continue down this page?
Finish them off.
So then part C of the result step, apply the effects of their cards. The active player may apply the effects of 1 or more of their cards, selected purse cards, skill cards for their hand, or quest cards, etc., in order to get additional successes and or take additional cards into account and or convert class icons into various bonuses. Get additional successes. Each star icon is worth 1 additional success, meaning if you have a star in your on your card in the result area or in your effect area, that star, they'll say add 1 to your successes. Take additional cards into account. When the action cost has a chain icon, the chain plus Y effect enables the active player to take into account the successes in the result area of Y additional revealed cards. So it looks like there's probably icons on these cards where they kind of counteract that chain icon, where it says, hey, if you're doing a chain yada yada, then you can add these many more on top of that. So in that example previously where I said I drew 5, and I can only use 3, if one of those 3 that I was using had this chain effect on it, and it said +2, I could then use the other 2. Convert class icons into various bonuses. Some effects enable the active player to convert into various bonuses. The fist, robes, flag, swirl, and star class icons. You'll see these on the cards. Shown in the result areas of the revealed cards on purse cards that they have selected on skill cards in their hand or quest cards, etc. So it looks like there are some class icons that can be converted. Clarifications. Even when the action cost has a chain icon, you may take every class icon in every revealed card's result area into account and apply the effect of every reflex skill card and every purse card you selected. Okay? It specifically calls out reflex skill cards here. So I assume advanced skill cards and regular skill cards may be different. Or maybe those icons.
Well, you're only also looking for the successes. So if you pick the 5-card example, you can do whatever the 5 cards say, but you can only count the successes on 3 of them.
Right. One of those 5 cards could allow you to count successes from the other 2. Got it. Yeah. Each class icon obtained may be used only once, only by the active player, and for a single effect. When an effect comes with max and X, which would be a number, the active player may apply that effect that many times at most. So if it says max 2, then you can only apply it twice. The question mark icon is wild. It may represent any of the following class icons. So the fist, the robe, the flag, or the swirl. That was a black question mark specifically. A white question mark icon means you may spend any of the following icons to apply the shown effect. The fist, the robe, the yada yada, the yada yada. Interesting. So one counts as it. The other one says you may spend any following icons to apply the effect shown effect.
I'm assuming the white one means like if this didn't match what you needed, but if you have the white icon, you can actually use that effect, even though it doesn't tie to
like... So saying this, so the black icon is wild. It may represent any of the following class icons. So the black one is literally any of those.
Yeah.
Okay. The white icon means you may spend any of the icons.
Yeah, I assume that's for like the bonuses. So you can choose a bonus that normally wouldn't apply, but if you have the white icon, now you can use it.
Oh, I got it. So the white icon, so this is just saying, okay, you can spend any of them. This is saying I am any of them to spend.
Yeah.
Got it.
And this is going to tell us how to do it.
Got it. Cool. Oh, it does. I should start reading ahead. Example, Bruno has a flail purse card, enabling him to convert...
We don't talk about him now.
I know. Don't talk about Bruno. Enable him to convert 3 of the white question mark class icons of his choice into 1 success, at most twice. When performing I'm going to call it melee, it's a sword, fight, or a strength, I'll call it, push-pull. Oh, it tells me it's a fight or a push-pull lift action.
Man, reading is hard.
Yep, it is. So what that's saying is he can convert 3 class icons of his choice into 1 success. So you'd have to have 3 of them, huh? I feel like that's a lot. And you do that twice, so you can get 2 successes for that one. Okay. In the example, Bruno has a stealth hand. Is that continuing this? I think so.
Yeah.
Bruno has a stealth skill card in hand, granting him 2 of the robe class icons and or enabling him to convert 1 robe class icon into 1 success, at most once, when performing the fight or dodge or be stealthy / hide action. Okay, pretty straightforward. Check the number of successes obtained against the action's difficulty is the next step. So finally, the active player compares the successes they obtained with the action's difficulty. In a simple action, that is the number of gold stars, and in a compound action is the number in a gold star shown on the upper face of the die resting on the card. As we covered beforehand, these guys are for those compound. So simple action, if the active player reaches or exceeds the number shown on the star, the action succeeds. Otherwise, it fails.
Compound. Equal to or greater to, that's nice.
Yeah. Compound action. For each success taken into account, the active player reduces the die's value by 1. If the die's value would go below 1, the action succeeds. Otherwise, the action fails. When a compound action fails, the die keeps its new reduced value.
So someone else can come try it again and makes it a little easier for them.
Right. So for each success taken into account.
Yeah, so if you, if you drew 3 and it was a 6.
So this was a 4, and if I had
3.
If I had...
Now it's 1.
No, because for it to be a success, it needs to be equal to or greater, like the simple one. So if I had 4, now this would tick down to 3 because that was 1 success.
No.
Yes.
Your successes are your gold stars.
No.
Yeah, each...
No.
Look at this. Read this right there.
Oh, so you're saying, okay, I got you. Okay.
So if it requires 4, but you only had cards to get 3, now it's a 1.
I was reading that it went for each time you succeed. I got it. You're right. Yeah, so for the die,
success,
and you have the 4, and if you have 3 gold stars, it ticks down to 1 because you have to use those 3 to tick down. So compound takes a little bit longer, but also could be easier to succeed at some point. Otherwise, the action fails. When the compound action fails, the die keeps its new value reduced. Got it. Yeah. Okay, clarification. If the active player gets more successes than needed, any excess successes are lost. Yep. When a card is discarded, returned, or banished, any die resting on it's removed from it and returned to the game box.
Oh, so if a card had 2 dice on it, somehow gets banished, those 2 dice are gone for the game.
When a card is discarded, returned, or banished, any die resting on it is removed from it and returned. Wow. I was making sure I read that right.
Yeah. So you want to, if you have compound, at least if you have 2 compound things on the board, you want to complete them.
Or if it's about to, or if it's about to, the card's about to be gone, then if you find another one, you're like, okay, I'm going to pull the die from that one.
Yeah.
Interesting. When a compound action succeeds, either the die is moved to another action row or the card is discarded. Most compound actions end with a success on the last action row. Okay. And 4, consequence. The active player applies the action's consequence and then discards all skill cards revealed during the result step. Part A, apply the consequences. If the action succeeds, they must apply the effect shown in the white consequence section. If it fails, you apply the effect shown in the black consequence section. If there's no such section, failing this action has no consequence. The main consequences of actions are detailed on pages 16 to 18. Cool. Discard the revealed cards. Lastly, the active player discards all skill cards revealed during the result step. So it has the skill card icon, the X and the blue diamond on top of a hand. Effect means the active player may add up to that many skill cards to their hand instead of discarding them.
Oh, nice. So you can recoup them.
Nice. Golden rule. Unless explicitly stated otherwise, e.g., it would say each involved character, 1 involved character, 1 random involved character, the consequence of an action applies only to the active player.
Makes sense.
Okay. And then
they give full example.
A bunch of examples.
So pretty much we've kind of explained all the examples as we were reading through, but if you really wanted a nice deep dive into exactly what everything was stated, there is a whole example page. But now we're going to talk about consequences.
Oh, Steve's favorite.
Wear a condom. I'm just kidding.
Or else there will be babies.
So there's a bunch of things, as we're about to see here, that are the consequences. So consequences of actions and events. Take a card. So the golden rule, card text and dialogue text override this rule book. So read the card. If the card tells you to do something that the book didn't tell you to do what's on the card.
Burn this game.
So the most frequent consequence you will apply is taking a card. So that'll be one of the numbered cards. So if you want to grab one randomly out of there. So throughout this whole thing, there are over 600 numbers. As you can see here, as I put it the wrong way. So there is, what else we'll do here? There we go. Number 003. So it'll give you a little thing on the front. On the back, it'll tell you exactly what happens. And of course, Nick somehow randomly chose the one that was injury. It literally says you are injured.
Oh, you're injured.
So when you take a numbered card as a consequence, the active player must take it from the adventure deck. Multiple cards with the same number are available. So sometimes some of these cards are going to have some of these numbers will have a stack of cards with the same number. The active player randomly takes one of the green ones and then reads the text and reveals it. So golden rule, some adventure cards are linked to a specific scenario. You may not take them unless you are playing that scenario or possess the card. So there's going to be a bunch of symbols on these cards that'll help you identify that as you play through. When the back of an adventure card shows a numbered box associated with a little, it'll be like right next to the card. It's a little flare thing here.
It's like a flag of sorts.
Yeah, so it's like a little flag with a banner next to it on the right-hand side. That indicates there are multiple versions of the card, and some of them may be linked to a scenario. Some of them will have a white little banner with an icon in it. When you see that, it corresponds to that specific scenario. Or matches a picture shown on the card. You must take it as a priority. Otherwise, you may not take it. There, cool. You must take it. Oh, wait, sorry. Otherwise, you may not take it, and you must take another card. So, for example, card 181 here that has that little black thing, that just means there's potentially multiple 181 cards. This 181 card specifically, though, has a little symbol here of, looks like 3 little ladybugs. Yeah. That indicates that it's specific to a scenario, and it must be taken as a priority if you're playing that scenario. And it does go through another few examples here to clarify. So here's the example. Okay. So if card 123, there are 3 available 123s. One with just the black, one with a little flame, one with a little money bag symbol. Bruno opens the threat booklet to see the scenario name he is playing. It has a drum icon. That means he cannot take the purse or the flame because it does not match the icon of the threat we're playing. You must take the one with the black border. Reverse, if it did match the purse icon, you must take the purse icon first. Unless that card's already been taken, then you would take the one with the black little banner. Yeah, and look at that. It says right there. Clarify. So in the scenario where there's no cards available of that number, you must take the gold card instead. So occasionally some of these will have a gold card. So if once all the green cards have been used with all of the symbols or anything, you must go to the gold card. Yep, right there. And again, it just has the same number. One's gold, one's green. If there are no cards at all with that number on them, you must take it as, when the numbox, no, it says numbox. That's just a weird phrasing.
That's the best, numbox.
Okay, sure. I don't have this. Okay. When the numbox of a card you must take is followed by a diamond icon with a little white dot in the center, it means you do not need to do anything if the card is not available. That makes more sense now. Otherwise, you must immediately return all cards from the past into the box and then take that card. If several players need to take a card, it starts with the active player and then goes through. So sometimes if I decide to join the fight, we both would take a card, but if he was the active player, he goes first. Once the card has been taken and revealed, you must do what it says on the card. So here's all of the card types that Nick has gone over before. So for example, if you picked a terrain card, one involved character must put this card into play by placing it on the board like a jigsaw puzzle. That's where in that map of the board, you'll see it actually slide into play. You have the permanent event card. You would be placing that on the board with the arrow pointed towards the terrain card that it applies to. You have the temporary event card. One involved player must immediately resolve this event and discard it into the past. If it shows a mandatory action, as we clarified, all characters on that terrain card must take that action. You have a global event card. If you pull a global event card, you're going to place it next to the game board, where it stays until the effect makes you discard, return, or banish it.
I was showing.
Yeah.
That's a terrain card.
Yep, so here's a terrain card. So if you had this terrain card out there, if you had that terrain card out there, and then all of a sudden you get a permanent event card would go on the bottom.
Or wherever it's pointed.
Or whatever it's pointed, yep. So this one's pointed on the right-hand side there with that little symbol. It would go right next to it. And then a temporary event card, same thing. Yep. Your global event card.
That's a temporary event card?
Yep, temporary event card just gets placed out. Has to be done by the active player. If it says the little thing there that identifies as a permit or a mandatory event, then everyone has to do it. That's on that square. Global event goes next to it. A purse card would come into your hand. You may either keep this card by putting it in front of you, or if you can discard it if you'd like to. And then there's a quest item card. And you must store this card on the quest item divider, which is over in that set of boxes.
Yep.
So that is if you had to take a number card as a consequence. Option 2 as consequences is to take a card not directly summoned by the numbers. So a player may have to take a card in the adventure deck without the card's number being shown. For example, when they find a hidden number or solve a riddle. And we'll cover what that means in a moment. In this case, a hashtag with a thumbs up icon must be visible on the back of the card you take, with the number, with the 3 hashtags being the number of the card that enabled you to take it. Again, we'll show you what the whole spotting a hidden number means in a moment. And then we have a bunch of other random consequences. So there's about 8 of them here. So one of the other consequences could be to read a dialogue box. So if that is the case, the active player opens the dialogue book right here, goes to the indicated number, they read it out loud, and apply any of the effects. Again, if it has a mandatory action, everyone on that square has to do it. When reading the dialogue, you may not take an action shown on a card unless the dialogue invites you to do so. So again, the dialogue book will clarify all of that as you go through the example. Adding skill cards to your hand. So one of the consequences could be, if you see a blue hand with an X in it, allows the active player to draw up to that many in the result step. You could have the consequence of discarding a card. So an in-game effect may instruct you to discard a card. The active player must immediately put a card into their discard pile if it is an action card, which is the blue, or into the past if it's an adventure card or an exploration card. The cards in the past may not be looked at unless an in-game effect allows you to do so. There is a symbol here where there's a stack of cards with a negative X next to it. That means the active player must discard the top card of their action deck. If you must discard more cards from your action deck than your action deck contains, you must immediately do that recovery, which is reshuffle and everything. And we'll go through in the next page exactly what the recovery steps are. There's probably going to be some more negative consequences to that. You may have to banish a card. Banish, different than discarding. So discarding would be you have your action pile, you just flip a card over into the discard. Banish means gone from the game. So definitely more drastic. And then there's a whole banish section in that little divider. You might have to return a card. The active player must immediately put that card back in its original deck. So that might be one of the green cards, just goes back into the adventure box. It can be grabbed by another player to future spot because it's not being banished, but you no longer have it. You may block or unblock a card. When an in-game effect instructs you to block a card, the affected player must immediately slip it underneath their character card. A block card may be looked at whenever you want. However, as long as it is blocked, you cannot use the effect. If it is a purse card, the weight must still be taken into account, but you could also decide to discard it if you want. If it is a skill card or a quest card, you may not discard it. In-game effect could do the opposite as well, though. It may allow you to unblock a card, which means take it obviously out and put it back into play. You can gain and lose life points. Obviously, life points are how you survive this game, which is usually Nick's problem. Just always taking wounds. You'll see that in our RuneScape video. Check that out. I took, I think, 2 wounds across 4 campaigns.
That's okay.
Nick took like 9.
That's fine. That's fine. I killed 3 of the 4 bosses. So
we collectively killed 4 of the 4 bosses.
I got the final blow on 3 of the 4.
You can blow a boss all you want.
Go for it. My goodness gracious. Only Helvarg. Only Helvarg. She was hot.
So gain and lose life points. Again, life points will be clarified in that recovery section. You can suffer damage. There is a X and like a red splat mark. It means you lose a certain amount of life points. If there is an X in a gold shield, it means it cancels out that loss of life points. So that's kind of nice. You can kind of do a block there.
Nice.
You might have to move a die to another row, which is during the compound action. So certain negative things might move it down that card, which could be positive or negative, I guess, because it might allow you to complete it a little bit faster, but you don't get all of the rewards for doing those things. And then the last consequence here is increase your community scores. So that is here in your little Citadel booklet. Yep. It gives you a bunch of things here. So you have influence, you have knowledge, you have production, defense, which are the 4 listed right there. So that just might affect plus or minus moving up and down those things.
Well, that was a mouthful, huh? Skill cards and hand size. So skill cards. Your skill cards help you when you perform actions, enable you to take new actions. So of course, those are all these blue cards that you'll have in your deck and hand. There are 3 types. So there's character skill cards, which will have your hand with a letter on them. These are the skills that the characters begin the adventure with. Their effects can only be applied by that player. There are advanced skills. These are the cards that players gain during the adventure. Their effects can only be applied from the player's hand as well. There are reflex skill cards. These are gained just like advanced skill cards, but their effect is only applied when they are revealed during the result step. Most effects on skill cards imply discarding them or blocking them. When this is not the case, their effect applies as long as you have them in hand. So character and advanced skill cards, you play from your hand of cards. Reflex skill cards are only played when they're drawn from the deck and put down on the table when doing that action. Hand size, otherwise stated, the maximum number of skill cards you may have in your hand is shown on your character card and depends on the player count. At any time, except during an action you are involved in, if you have more skill cards in hand than you are allowed in your hand size, you must discard any excess cards of your choice. So at any time, not end of turn, just period. So if you're taking one, you need to get rid of one. Take an action / apply an effect. You may take an action, which is, again, the white square, visible on one of your skill cards. When you are the active player, you may apply some or all of the effects shown on the skill cards you have in hand, provided the brown condition associated with the effect matches the action being performed in that white square. So again, rope for rope, fighting for fighting, etc. Discard / give. You may discard skill cards from your hand into your discard pile at any time. You may not give any of your skill cards to another player. So no trading skills. Yeah. So if I learn how to make fire, I can't teach Steve how to make fire.
It's fine. I don't need to make fire. I'm hot-blooded.
Okay. Purse cards and maximum carried weight. So purse cards help you when you perform actions or enable you to take new actions. They usually have one or more key words that limit the number of these cards that may be selected during an action. You may not select, in order to apply their effects, more than one purse card that has the same keyword. So if I have 2 cards that say wrench, I can only use one of those wrench cards. I don't know if wrench is actually a keyword. It was just an example. Don't quote me on that. Maximum carried weight.
Maybe wench is a keyword.
Oh, maybe. That's gonna be your character. The maximum weight you are allowed to carry can be found on your character card and depends on the player count, much like your hand size. Your carried weight is the total weight of your purse cards, including your blocked cards. It may exceed your maximum carried weight. However, as long as this is the case, you may not take the move action on your character card. So you can have more cards than you can carry by weight, but because you're weighed down, you can't move.
Makes sense. I think that's there's multiple games, RPG games that do that. I know Skyrim. I'm going to go back to Skyrim.
Video games, obviously.
I was like, Skyrim is actually Diablo doesn't. So Diablo doesn't care about weight. It just cares about like your backpack has a certain amount of spaces in it.
Dark Souls does it where like you move slower the heavier you are.
Skyrim has like 2 markers. So there's one, it's like if you're under your weight, you're good. Mm-hmm. If you're over your weight to a point, you move slower. And then there's just an end point where you just can't take any more weight on. So
I like the weight mechanic. So one of the games that I was working on beforehand, I do want to design a campaign game.
Oh, for sure.
In case you guys didn't know, Baldwin Board Games is also designing games. Keep an eye out for everything that we're going to be doing. One of those was an RPG game where it did have this weight mechanic to where you had the initial negative consequence, right? So you move slower if you're over your weight. But if you get to a certain point, you still move slower, but now you actually get a buff up in strength because you're so used to holding that weight. So I like there being, if you're going to do
like to fail forward. I hate failing.
Well, I like the thing is like, okay, yeah, I like the double-edged sword. I like this sucks, but it's also good for this reason.
I like the opposite. I like where it's just pure strategy. Like, I can't carry all this. I have to figure out a way to get my job done by dropping things off.
Well, it could be a problem. You could go for the strength, but if you can't move quick enough, the strength may not matter if you can't get to where you got to go. So that's the trade-off. I like having that choice. Anyway, back to this game. Take an action / apply an effect. You may take an, again, white square action visible on your purse cards. When you are the active player, you may apply some or all of the effects shown on the purse cards you choose to select during the gear up step of an action, provided the brown square condition associated with the effect matches the action being performed. So example, again, the fight condition matches the fight action. Reminder, you may not select multiple cards with the same keyword, so cannot carry 2 wrenches. But if you can dodge a wrench,
then you can carry a ball.
Oh, no. Discard / give. You may freely discard your purse cards even if they are blocked, as long as you do not have a lock icon on it. Golden rule, if a player may decide to discard a locked purse card my apologies, golden rule, a player may not decide to discard a locked purse card or give it to another player. A character may give a purse card to another character as long as they are both in the same terrain card and not performing an action.
Valid.
When this happens, the player who gives or the one who receives the purse card must discard the top number of X cards from their action deck, where the X is equal to the weight of the item they were given. So there's a little exertion in the trading there. You may give one of your blocked purse cards unless it has the locked icon, but it remains blocked. So locked and blocked are different things.
Yeah, so locked means it's stuck forever. Blocked means you can just discard it or swap it, but it stays in the blocked format until someone does it.
Exactly. So we got life points, unconsciousness, and recovery.
All right.
Should make sounds like Steve's day.
Then we have exploration. That's going to be fun. So life points. So life points obviously are keeping you alive. Every time you begin a new scenario, the threat booklet tells you how many life points each character receives, and you must indicate that in the life point counter. So I'm assuming that's in that book somewhere. There's a life point counter. Or that. Because it said, we told earlier, that was like, yeah, make sure you pay attention.
Yeah. A+ for you.
During the adventure, you gain and lose life points, and you'll adjust the counter appropriately.
I prefer accordingly.
It says accordingly, but I changed it to appropriately.
Naturally.
You may exceed... Wow, this is crazy. Okay. You may exceed your initial number of life points. You can never have more than 99. Well, yeah. If we need 99 to survive...
My goodness.
When you drop to 0 or below 0, your counter is set to 0. You are now unconscious. And then you move into unconsciousness. When you become unconscious, you must immediately remove your figure from the board. Okay. So how do you remove your figure from the board, though, if you're unconscious?
I know. I assume when we drop to 0, you're supposed to punch me in the face.
Deal.
And I'm just, I fall. I
just like pressure point.
Just Vulcan death grip me.
After that, you return all the cards that you have in your hand that with the word temporary. You discard all of your skill cards from your hand. You shuffle all the cards in your discard pile back into your action deck. Draw 3 cards from your action deck to form a hand, and then banish one of these cards of your choosing. You will be able to use these cards once you regain consciousness for the 2 you didn't discard. If all characters are unconscious, you start all over again. The adventure ends immediately and all players lose. If every character involved shows a little hourglass card, so if every character involved if the action shows the little hourglass card, the card is returned. So it must mean that it goes back to the box and you can just attempt that sometime later on. When an unconscious character regains consciousness, they put their figure back into play on the active player's terrain card. This happens thanks to in-game effects. In the worst case, this happens thanks to in-game effects, or in worst case, when players are at the Citadel. I don't know why that extra statement was needed. But you go back to the active player's terrain card.
Okay.
And then in recovery. So that was just the unconsciousness step. The recovery step, if your action deck pretty much empties out. So
That's what we mentioned earlier.
As Nick mentioned, like you started through my action cards. I think 15 is going to be the starting stack.
Yeah.
If those 15 cards are used up and go into the discard pile, you're still conscious for recovery. You're still there, but you don't have any more life force, as they're going to call it here. So to perform recovery, you must lose 1 life point for each 2 cards you choose to randomly take in your discard pile to shuffle back into your action deck.
For each 2?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So like if you run through all 15,
you're taking 7
you're
hits.
taking 7 hits if you choose to do. Wow.
You may not choose to lose more life points than you have, obviously. So a quick example, if this character wanted to perform a recovery in order to shuffle 8 random cards from the discard pile back in the action deck, he loses 4 life points. When you draw or discard more cards than your action deck contains, draw or discard whatever cards remain in your action deck, perform a recovery, and then continue drawing. So if, for whatever reason, you have to draw 3 cards and you only have 1 card left in your deck, you draw that 1 card, perform your recovery to bring 2 more back, and then draw those 2 cards. Makes sense. There are variants, so there's a story mode versus survival mode. Story mode for adventurers who value storytelling more than survival. If you play that mode, for recovery, you lose 1 life point for every 3 cards. For survival mode, if you want to do it with more of a challenge, you lose 2 life points for each 3 cards. So right now, base game, you lose 1 life point for every 2 cards you want to recover. You can move that up to 3 to be story mode, or you can lose 2 for 3.
So like easy, medium, and hard. We'll play the normal, hard way when we get into that.
So now, how do we explore the collapsing lands of this universe?
Exploring the collapsing lands. Well, first you must collapse to your knees. Opening the space occupied by an exploration card. An exploration card is a random event that hides a portion of the collapsing lands. You need to resolve an exploration card in order to remove it and put into play the adventure card, generally a terrain card, that belongs there. This is how you explore the collapsing lands. And so an exploration card are these with a white background. So when you are on a terrain card, you can choose to explore. You'll do what it says. We'll explain here, flip it over, yada, yada, and then you would put a terrain card down if it says to do so. Once the exploration card has been resolved and removed from the board, the active player must put an adventure card into play, right where the exploration card used to be. The number on the adventure card is shown on the num box associated with the little orange icon arrow on the terrain card that it points towards in the open space. Let me see if I can find one of these. I know I had one beforehand. Was it 20 something or other? So I can show you.
You know it's right here, right? In the example.
Yeah, but it's too small for me to see on screen. So I want to find...
You should take 94.
Huh?
You should take 94.
Does that say the number there?
Yeah.
94? Nice.
Work smarter, not harder.
Work farther, not harder. Yep. So, this... You want to go back to mine? So this right here, this little doohickey, so the 1 means you would put a 1 exploration card here, and then once you resolve that, you would take the num box 86, and that's what would go up top, is 86. And that's 94. Put her back. 93, 93, 94, in front of gold. There we are. Cool. If the adventure card is a terrain card, the active player must make sure that it fits with each adjacent terrain card like a jigsaw puzzle, and then put the new exploration cards into play, foggy side up, in each free space adjacent, which has the orange arrow on the new terrain card is pointing. Each of these new exploration cards must carry the same pictograph, usually a Roman numeral, as the 1 arrow points to the space cosmic. Okay. So match the Roman numerals around the card. If you must put an exploration card into play and it's not available, you must immediately return all the cards in the past and then take one of the newly available cards. Note, an exploration card may be a permanent event, a temporary event, etc. If it is a permanent event, the card remains in play, making it impossible to discover the terrain it hides until it is resolved. And then it goes over the explanation, which we just showed you physically. Not enough room to put the card into play. When there's not enough room on the space of the table to put a card into play, all the characters must take actions to meet on the same terrain card.
Yes.
Then players must return the terrain cards of their choice, except the one containing their figures, along with the permanent event cards attached to them, making sure that all remaining terrain cards are reachable. If applicable, you must put the new exploration cards into play on the adjacent spaces, just like beforehand. So essentially, if you run out of room on your table, so if you're playing a small table, you kind of screw yourself. So get a big table. Play on the floor. You'll never run out of space. No? No? Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Especially if a little dog beats the cards.
True. Moving a figure on the board. To move your figure on the board, you must, with exceptions, take the move action, which is like little feet, shown on your character card, which allows you to move your and only your figure to an adjacent terrain card, provided your carried weight does not exceed your maximum carried weight. Other effects you will discover as you play. Skills, events, etc. may move figures. Some cards refer to the cardinal points, north, south, east, west. In this regard, assume card text and icons are orientated to be read from west to east. So left to right. Sense? Note,
cards read from west to east? West to east is right to left.
No, it's not. We live in the west. East Coast is over there. Looking at a map, north, east, south, and west. So west to east is left to right. Not where you're sitting now.
Yeah.
not where you're sitting. My goodness.
I'm like, the East Coast is to my right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So no, it may happen that some permanent events, so cliffs, bottomless pits, etc., show several placement arrows, showed several placement arrows. Arrows separate two terrain cards in this case. These events feature an action whose consequence is to move the figure from one to... Okay. There's a permanent event card that has the two permanent event arrows. So you're going to be on one side of these arrows. To get to the other side, you have to do what the permanent event is. So if it's a pit, you have to get yourself over the pit to get to the other one. You can't just simply move it to terrain, is what that's trying to say. I just can't read it for whatever reason. Reminder, if a mandatory action can be seen on a terrain card, players whose figures arrive onto that terrain card must immediately take it collectively unless it can no longer be taken.
Yep.
Spotting a hidden number. Some cards, terrain, permanent cards, temporary event, purse, etc., may contain hidden numbers. When you spot one, you may take the card bearing that number and then, after making sure it's the right card, discard the card on which you spotted the hidden number and replace it with the new one. When a hidden number can be seen on a terrain card or on a permanent event card attached to it, you may not take the corresponding card unless you are on that terrain.
Makes sense.
Example, so on the 154 terrain card, RULEBOOK spotted the hidden number 316. He discards the 154 card, takes the 316 card, which has the 154 thumbs up icon on its back, confirming it's the right card. Note, a hidden number is always made of 3 digits. On the back of the card matching the hidden number, you should see the number of the card with a thumbs up on which you spotted it. If that icon is not there, or if it does not match the number on the card you spotted the hidden number, then you must have taken the wrong card and must return it. You're seeing things. You should probably go take a nap. And then we have the threat book and the leaflet stuff. And then it goes into saving. So the threat book with scenarios bookmark. So threat books are divided into scenarios, narrative story. Cool. Each scenario sets one or more goals the players must reach. At the end of each scenario, you read its epilogue. So the threat books are much like the initial story cards from 7th Citadel, from 7th Continent in the first game. The threat book details the consequences of your actions, which vary based on your choices that you perform or your performance during the scenario. The booklet then guides you to a new scenario, and so on until the final confrontation against the threat you've chosen is faced. The position of the book in the threat booklet, the position of the bookmark in the threat booklet is defined by the scenario and reminds you which scenario you are playing. I mean, these are...
Yeah. So it just helps you. They give you this cool little bookmark. It just helps you keep track of everything. So if whatever reason you have Alzheimer's like some of us do, or you play multiple games, you just take a while to come back to this one, the bookmark will just help you.
This says here at the bottom, there are several ways to go back to the Citadel. Most common is by moving the character's figures along the terrain cards that lead back to the Citadel and then resolving the permanent event that enables you to end the current scenario. Okay?
Yep.
Cool. Then it just kind of goes over the player's progress and Citadel leaflet. Do you want to read over what each of these pages mean? And then continue on to saving? I mean, so this is specifically talking about what all these mean on here.
Yeah, we're just going to do a quick highlight here. So player progress Citadel leaflet. So the player aid page. So we'll just put this here in front of me real quick so you can see this. So on the very back of this Citadel booklet, you have your player aid page. So it contains a reminder of the main action consequences, description of the traits. So here up at the bottom, it says your creature traits. It describes literally what every one of them are. It tells you all of those potential consequences that Nick and I have covered. It shows you all of those action things that could be in that white box and the corresponding brown condition box.
That's great.
And then it shows you all the actions. So the normal white box versus the one with the jagged red border versus the one with the stairs, etc. The building pages. So if we open this up to the back side, because I'm on the wrong side. Here we go. We have 2 building pages.
Nice.
So the building pages obviously will be all of the, I think we have little things for them in this box, right? We had a little punch outs?
Nope. No punch outs for buildings.
Oh, that was in the different box. So the buildings are just here. So it says here when you have a little pick and shovel symbol on a destiny page, you get to come to the buildings. So that's pretty straightforward. Just follow the cards. If the card tells you to go to the buildings page, you come here, you make the appropriate markings. All of these looks like it has little benefits. So school gives you books. You have places of worship that give you different things that call different card numbers out. On the community page, that's the very first.
I mean, we'll read actually how to build them and what.
Well, this just says where players construct build by checking boxes on the buildings. So when the building has all the boxes checked, then it becomes active.
That's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Well, it would have told you. Okay.
Well, no, because sometimes in some games, these check boxes means you can only use that ability. Like you can use it multiple times. So this specifically means you need to do this that many times to completely build it.
Which, like some of these, it looks like both of these have the same effect. One just needs 1, one needs 3, which is kind of interesting. The community page, which is your front page, this is where you write down your community of people. So whatever you want to name your group, who's playing, and all of that. You keep track of the level of your ground achiever, the artifact in which you begin every scenario with, except for the intro scenario. The level given by the scenario enables you to reduce the amount of energy you spend to explore. And then you have that production, defense, knowledge, and influence levels, 1 to 25.
It's ground shiver.
Ground shiver. I said shiver?
Yeah.
And then just to clarify what these do. So production represents the community's capacity to produce food.
Nice.
Defense, obviously, is your defense, so defending yourself. Influence represents your relationships between the community and other inhabitants of the collapsing lands. And then knowledge is knowledge and information. What it says here, though, is you cannot go under 0. You cannot go more than 25.
Cool.
Additionally, in this book, you have your destinies page.
Yep.
That was what we briefly covered earlier. So during the game, you gain Hope Reborn. So that is like experience points that you can spend to help go through here. Down here, it shows you what all of these different symbols mean.
Nice.
So obviously, it's probably going to tell you to start in the dead center maybe, and then work your way in whatever direction it tells you. You have your map of Kel, which is the territory that we are in. And then you have your side quest page.
Cool.
So on your side quest page, you'll list whatever side quest you're working on. It generally involves writing down the title and the dialogue from the dialogue book. That is why you have these little notes section here. When you add a side quest, it becomes active, but not necessarily initiated. So there's initiate and there's a finish. So it's active, but it might tell you it's active, but to initiate, go to this location. So we'll see that. When you officially initiate it, you'll be explicitly instructed to do so. Some side quests do not need this status to reach completion. When it is finished, it'll explicitly tell you when you're done. It is no longer active. Ignore any in-game effects that concern it. Reminder, underlined text on a card refers to a side quest. Some side quests cannot be finished unless you are at the Citadel. And then the last little thing here, there's a glossary in the back that goes over some of the terms, which is nice. It goes over
saving, which I think is only really important if once you're playing and you go to save
Yeah,
the
so
game.
just utilize this page to check back on everything. How to save, how to re-resume, how to leave. So let's say if Nick and I are playing now, if a third adventure like Jen wants to join in, it'll kind of clarify how you can do that. And then the very back, which is nice, it goes over all of the icons. Yep. So it kind of is the same thing as here, just a little bit more clarity on some of them. So you have your card effects, you'll have some more action consequences, some other actions. So everything's right there. So the last thing before we end this video is we're not going to go through the whole introduction scenario. There is actually a tutorial, I double-checked. But this introduction scenario, after you read the rulebook, tells you how to set up your characters. So we'll just show you the general perspective of how to set up a character so you're able to understand it. But then you'll go through the preparation phase yourself, actually start with adventure card number 10, and then play the intro scenario. Again, so in order to start up a player and the intro scenario, you're just going to follow this little booklet that they give you. So what you do is it'll give you a nice intro scenario. It'll talk you through the introduction. It tells you there's 4 characters, and each of those characters have a corresponding card. So we're just going to do one of these characters so you can fully understand exactly how to set up this deck. So I was about to be the one I read. That's awesome. So we have Arthur. So here it says, for each player, choose a character from among those. Obviously, there's the 4. Take the corresponding figure. You're going to read this little section, and then you're going to follow how to make your action deck.
Looks like there's 2 sides to Arthur, so you can choose one or the other. Looks like.
Maybe. All right. So Arthur remembers nothing before being imprisoned. So this, I'm not going to actually read this right now. We'll save this for our actual gameplay. Yeah. So it gives a little story about Arthur. But it says, if you choose this character, you may take a 125 card before starting the adventure. So that's going to be an item. So you would go to 125. You would grab one of the items. It's going to be a deck of 125 cards. In this case, we just like to randomly choose one.
So it would be this. There's a big spiel on the back. And it looks like it's a strange mark.
And that's obviously going to have something that applies to them.
Yep.
So for each player, once you've done this initial step, you're going to go into the action set, and you're going to see the skill cards. So the skill cards, there should be 15 that have a letter corresponding to your character. So you have A, B, C, and D as character names. So you should have 15 A cards in this deck.
Okay. That's a B. That's a B. There's your 15 cards.
You have your 15 A cards. Again, blue on one side, completely blue. The other side will be your action cards. These will get shuffled to make up your action deck. But then you also get 5 skill cards. Those are the X cards at the very back. So there are 20 skill cards available. There are 4 ways in which you can actually divvy out these skill cards. First is they actually say, hey, here's the recommended version of how to do them.
Cool.
Option 2 is as a group, however many people are playing, you can choose whatever 5 you want, whatever 5 the other person wants. But then you can do it one of the 2 ways Nick and I will do it.
Random.
Which one is random, or you do draft style, where he gets to pick an action card or skill card, I get to pick one, and so on. So you would get 5 of those. You would add that to your deck of 15, shuffle the deck. So now let's just say that I am the blue little tile person here. It says set your life points to 0. So on this little thing, you would set your life points to 0. Then each character will receive X life points. So if there's 2 players playing, every character is going to receive 20 life points. So I made a little 20 marker there. You would draw 2 cards from your newly shuffled action deck.
I think you'd only take whatever side you chose.
Oh, I agree, but I don't know.
It says right there.
Yeah, no, but it hasn't gotten to any of that. They didn't really say
it said take your miniature.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, you said earlier. You said take the card and the corresponding miniature.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Whatever. So whatever side you chose, you have a miniature, and that's why there's multiple miniatures.
Yeah, because the card, these are double-sided.
That makes sense. So then it says take 0, 1, 0 out of the box. That'll become your first card for the board.
No. You mean
nope.
0, 1, 0, so it's 10?
Yep.
Okay. Let's make sure you didn't say it weird.
Nope, I said it normal.
Just making sure.
So 0, 1, 0 is now going to show you the beginning of the
You
board.
can just be normal and say 10.
10, whatever. There's a 0, 1, and a 0 on the card. So this is going to show you the board.
That's the first terrain.
And that's your first terrain. You'll both put your characters there. As you can see on this little terrain space, I'll just zoom it in for everybody. There is a 12, a 14, and a 15, all with little symbols on them. So you would start there. You have the little white box that has little indicators. So one has an eye, one has a drawer, one has a map. So if any of your action cards, so we'll just grab some action cards here, have that symbol. So here we go, perfect. This one has that brown box with nothing in it, so it's wild. So I can then try one of these actions. We would then pull that card out, and so on and so forth as you go through the introduction scenario. The one thing to keep in mind when you do your intro scenario, do not use your Citadel booklet. This is purely for the purpose of you learning the game. You will then not save any of the progress of your characters. You'll then start fresh when you actually start threat number 1.
Cool.
So we are not going to do any of that yet. We don't want to actually start the game yet until we're ready to start this campaign.
Yep.
But definitely tune into our future videos. We will get to 7th Citadel as a full campaign playthrough at some point.
Yeah, so it sounds like the threat books are the individual campaigns. So we'll choose the first threat book to jump into and go from there.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot of fun. It's very different than anything else really that we have. The survival aspect of it is a lot of fun from what I remember from 7th Continent. So this has a lot of new things in there. Some things that sound like they're definitely improved upon. One of which there used to be in 7th Continent, there were little dice and you put those on your items. And when it ticked down, you lost use of the item because essentially it wore away. So that was a difficult, kind of annoying thing to manage. So we'll see if that comes back into play now or not for this one. Yeah, what are your initial thoughts kind of for reading through this?
Interested?
What do you think you're most excited for?
I've just obviously playing Lands of Galzir. I like that whole, like, you can kind of go everywhere and things can happen. It could be positive, could be negative.
Yeah.
So I like that, for lack of a better term, the suspense aspect of
what's going to come.
I'm going to go this way and we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah. And it is a lot of fun. That is one of the most fun things about this is, all right, let's see what's on this card. And then you're looking at the cards to see if you can find like the secret number to see what that is. Or you read one card that says you need this item and you're like, okay, I don't know how to find that. It really feels like that old school kind of RPG, like Legend of Zelda kind of thing where you're exploring to find what you need. And okay, then you double back and go and do that. Or like, oh, this thing spoke about that. Or you find something, you're like, what is this even for? And you have no idea until you find a spot later and like, holy cow, that's what this is for. And just there's a lot of that really fun sort of stuff.
Where your teammate ends up in jail for half the game.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this live learn as we went through the rule book verbatim for 7th Citadel. Like we said, we will get to this at some point in the future. So stay tuned. Follow us on Twitch and on YouTube and on Instagram at Bald and Board Games. This was Bald and Board Games. I'm Bald.
I'm bored.
We'll see you at the table.